What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the RTBG show. My name is Jason Lee, and I am your host for this podcast. Here we talk about productivity, creativity, and lifestyle, and I am so glad that you are here. And if you want to learn more about that, make sure you don't forget to subscribe so that you don't miss another episode. And I was actually scrolling through Reddit today and actually found one of the questions that is on one of the self-development pages or groups that is inside Reddit. And if you don't know what these groups are, you guys can find them on the screen right here or in the show notes in the description if you are listening. So basically, one of the questions that came up within one of the posts was, how can I be more patient? And after seeing this, I was thinking for a while and I realized something. I've actually never talked about patient or even discussing about being patient in the podcast before. And when I look up this topic on the internet, a lot of people wanted to know, how do you become more patient? And now, first off, I just want to say that I'm not the most patient person in the world. And I'm not saying that I'm an expert who can turn people into Buddhist monks that can meditate for hours on end. So what I want to do today is I want to talk about how you can, become a little bit more patient, having a little bit more fun and having a little bit more relaxed life, right? That most people want it. And I'm going to break down why people want patience so much and how you can start taking those extra steps so you can become more patient in your life as well. All right, so there are three things that I want to talk about. So number one is the difference between patient and being impatient. Now, even though these two words sound completely different, it has a lot of meaning, depends on each person. What I want you to do is that you need to find that difference between being patient and being impatient. Each of us have our own definition of being patient and impatient. For me, a lot of the time, patient means that I have to be able to have the discipline to wait for something that I know will come, and being able to fight the urges to try and get that instant gratification when it comes. Now, your definition of patient might be different from mine and for a lot of people, but what I want you to do is find that definition of patient and impatient for yourself and then figuring out the steps to go towards it. So the world that we're living in today, despite all the negative news that is on the internet, probably living in one of the best era ever in the world. Mainly because everything we can access to a lot of the necessities that we need as human beings, and probably even more. Now, this caused a lot of us to be impatient and crave for instant gratification. Hence, we become even more impatient as time goes on, because more and more companies, corporations, and social media agencies and apps and technology are trying to sell us these instant gratifications, because more and more things are accessible, more people want it, and therefore it's actually messing up our brain really badly. I did not say all that so that I can bash people and humanity for being impatient, but what I am trying to point out to you is that making sure that you understand why people are being impatient, why you may be impatient, why we are sometimes impatient, because the world that we're living in right now. The second point that I really want to bring up is that when you are being impatient, quote unquote impatient, after you defined what your definition of impatient is, make sure you don't beat up yourself for it. Because if you really think about it, you are basically creating this endless loop for yourself. So whenever you did something that you quote unquote define as impatient, it leaves you becoming more impatient. It's like dominoes in a day, right? So if, let's say in the morning, you yell at your children for doing something and you didn't even wait. You don't have the patience to do something. And that happened. And then you start feeling bad about it. And then it leads to the next decision and the next decision and the next decision. And that's what I call that. That's the domino effect. And you really want to avoid that. So the next time you feel like you're making an impatient decision, or you feel like you're making a really bad decision, make sure you don't dwell on it. Make sure you don't think too much about it so that you don't keep messing up throughout your day. And it's okay being impatient from time to time. That is just basic human being. That's who we are. We mess up all the freaking time. So after figuring out what is your definition of patient and what is your definition of being impatient, and also being okay with the fact that, hey, you can mess up a lot of the times and you can be impatient a lot of the times. The third kind of key notes that I want to spread to you is that you have to practice. You have to be able to know that, hey, things are going to be fine. You have to practice, because any kind of personality or skill or things or a trait that you want to have is because of what you do. So things that you do is the person that you are. So the more you practice, the more patient you can be, right? So being patient can actually be trained. So once you understand that, you can go out and you can train your brain to be more patient. You can train yourself to be more patient. And what I personally did for myself is that, so I'm a video editor. You guys didn't know already. I do video editing a lot of the time, and it requires tons and tons of patience. And what I would do a lot of the time is I would sit down, and instead of rushing through an edit or rushing through an animation, what I would do is I would take my time until the point where I break, and that's it. And if I keep doing this over and over again, eventually I build up, a patience and discipline to do the work that I want to do, and the quality obviously increases. And so if you want to build your patience in your business, in your life, you got to be able to practice that over and over again, so that you can become more and more patient. So being patient is a trait, and you can train it so that you can become more patient. So, and a bonus thing that I want to actually add here is that you have to understand your reasoning of being impatient. It's because you're angry, it's because you're sad, it's because you don't like something, or is it whatever it is that you are having. Make sure you understand why you are actually being impatient in the first place, so that you can actually figure out the way of doing it. A lot of us are being impatient because of our dissatisfaction of life, right? Especially job dissatisfaction. Let me quickly read off the job dissatisfactions. So it is being underpaid, limited career growth, lack of interest, poor management, unsupported boss, lack of meaningful work, opportunities for growth or incentives for meaningful work and life balance. Are those the things that are making you being angry, and then turns out you being impatient and putting it on everybody else? Is that why? So if you're telling me that you're being impatient, the things that I just listed off is probably one of the most common things that I would think inside my head when you said that you were being impatient, because that's probably the most cases for a lot of people because of their job dissatisfaction. So understanding where your impatience is coming from, where your temper is coming from, now you can start dealing with it, and then overall you can become happy, and then being less impatient and more patient with other people, with yourself, right? And I guess another important note that I really want to add here. Wow, we have a lot of notes in this episode. So it's being grateful, right? Being grateful is probably the one thing that I would recommend for someone who is being impatient, because impatient, again, I said it was resulted from wanting instant gratification. And when you are grateful, that instant gratification turns into just a want and not a need, right? The clear distinction between a want and a need is very, very big. So when you start being grateful for your life, right? Being grateful for the roof that is on your head, for the water that you're drinking, for the food that you eat, for the car that you drive, for the family that you have. Being grateful is probably one of the best ways if you ever want to become more patient with your life. If you're only looking at all the things that are negative about life, you're never going to become patient. You're never going to know, quote unquote, that good things are going to happen to you, because you're only looking at the negative side. So if you want to become more patient, another thing that you want to do is that you want to become more grateful. Wow, that was a lot. I hope you guys enjoy that episode. And if you do, please make sure you don't forget to leave a review on wherever you are listening, on iTunes or Overcast, on wherever you're getting your podcast. And also, if you want to ask more questions or suggest recommendations, you guys can DM me at LeeJason, LeJasonn_. So if you really did enjoy this episode, make sure you share it with a friend or family. And until the next episode, guys, peace.